So Back for Blood is in open beta right now, and I've been checking it out. Here are my thoughts on the game as a relative novice in the genre. No, you guys weren't mishearing. I am relatively novice in regard to games like Back for Blood. I've actually never played a Left 4 Dead game, and really speaking, I've not had much experience with this type of game overall. Perhaps the only comparison I could make is Vermintide, which I've played a few hours of, but other than that, I've not really touched much of this kind of cooperative first-person genre. What I found though as I played it was I actually really enjoy what Back 4 Blood had to offer, and that's coming from someone who doesn't necessarily like the kind of zombie theme either. So let's break this discussion up into a few different parts. First of all, the beta experience itself. The beta is actually really great. I didn't experience any lag or bugs or anything of that sort. I also didn't really notice any kind of gaping holes in the gameplay or anything like that. The one thing I did find a little bit jarring in terms of the beta experience, and I think this might put some people off potentially if they did jump in during the beta, is that it kind of just throws you in there. When you're first put into the game, you're basically put straight into your camp, and you don't really get much direction in terms of what certain things do, aside from, hey, do this, hey, do that. But there's no real elaboration. To be fair, it's not too bad, and you do kind of work things out as you're going along, but some people might be a little bit more confused on this than others. Otherwise, it was really easy to find groups for things, and I wasn't really struggling to kind of complete objectives, etc. and so on. So it's a really fun experience, especially for a beta of a game. Sometimes you go into a beta for a game and it's a hot mess still. That doesn't seem to be the experience here. It's very much kind of a testing of the game and, you know, for people to enjoy it ahead of its release. As regards the story of the game, the beta actually kind of doesn't elaborate on that too much. And I think that's because they don't want it to be tainted when you go into the game proper. Though I do think that adds to the confusion, because you're not even given kind of an opening cutscene or kind of an opening tutorial, really speaking. You're thrown in there, you know that these characters exist, and that's about it, really. You don't know how they know each other, what's kind of gotten them to this point, who they're working for. That's kind of all up in the air. And I feel like that could have been elaborated on slightly to allow for an easier transition into this world. But on the opposite hand of that, all the characters seem pretty enjoyable. They're quite a diverse cast, I would say, and you know, you do get some tidbits when you're going through the missions. Also, it seems like we only got a part of the campaign's first act during this beta, so again, it's hard to judge what the story is actually going to be like. Gameplay wise, and this is obviously a larger section compared to the rest, there was no glaring issues that I could see, though admittedly I'm not personally a big kind of gun person. I don't know much about guns and how they work and how they should act and feel, etc. So that's something that I can't really speak too much to. Otherwise, objectives are fairly varied. You get a lot of different things that you're doing through missions. On one mission you're blowing something up, the next you're trying to escape certain things, in others you're building a safe house for yourself. You know, there's a few different things that are going on. There's a few different ways that the game is played, and there's a few different enemies that come up because of this. The one part that I do think falls slightly flat for me, though, is the use of cards in this game. The cards don't seem to be as powerful as you'd expect to where that they would matter. You do build them up as you go along, but it feels like, oh, well, they're not really doing much for me, at least as far as I felt. You know, I didn't feel much difference between choosing one card and the next. There were a few that were kind of strong, and like you could tell that they were useful when you were getting into like low health situations or something like that, but generally I kind of picked one and just kind of went along and didn't really notice too much of a difference. But maybe that's because I'm not, again, focused on that sort of gameplay when I'm playing. I do think that they could do with explaining the card system a bit better to avoid this going forward for people like me. One thing that I did really appreciate, however, was the ability to drop in, drop out. When I was playing initially, I didn't realize this was a thing. I thought when you stuck to a run, you were with that run until you'd finished. And I was with one guy and two bots. And later on into the run, we actually got two more people. And it was great to see that, because it meant that when we were getting to those kind of harder little bits, we actually had other people with us rather than bots. But on the opposite hand, it also meant that if I really needed to go, I could. And I didn't feel bad about doing so. The one thing I would say, however, is that it doesn't really make it obvious that that's the case. I do think they could make this better, however, by adding a leave game button to the end screen, rather than having it when you X out to the main menu. As it is right now, it almost feels like you have to stay for all those levels, even when, really speaking, you don't. Now, a quick word on the versus PvP mode. I actually really enjoyed this too. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but it was quite interesting to play. You essentially bandy back and forth between being the cleaners and being the ridden. And yeah, it was quite fun. The fact that you get to play as ridden in this mode was obviously a big plus. And you get to learn their skills and mutate them to kind of learn new ways of playing with them. I don't think I'd play this a lot just because it did seem to drag in parts, but generally speaking, it was quite fun. And I think it'll be a favourite mode for a lot of people, just because it's something different and kind of outside of the normal campaign. And obviously, as I said, that you get to play as the ridden. Overall, guys, this is only a beta, so obviously we don't have everything that's going to be in the game, and on top of that, the game will be polished over time. But overall, I am impressed with what I've seen here, and I will be keeping an eye on this game going forward. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please share, like, and subscribe. And if you're thinking about getting Back 4 Blood, leave a comment below. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.